What I'd like to do today is I've prepared a few kind of conceptual things that I'd like to talk about, but I also want to hear a little bit. Let's just quickly go around in a circle, and one of the first things you got to do in order to improve is to have an awareness of something you're struggling with, right? So maybe I'm just going to ask you guys individually: is there any situation where you have felt particularly unprepared, or you kind of didn't know what to say, or you felt like what you said didn't come out right, or maybe you said something yet it didn't work, or you thought it would work and it didn't work, or something of that nature? I want to, first of all, again, thank you for the commitment of your time today. I want this to be super valuable. So let's just do a quick little roundabout, and I'll take some notes really fast, and you tell me a little bit about the specific language skills you're looking to develop, or the problems that you have found yourself in, and that will be kind of the direction that we lead this session in. Is that cool?
Yeah.
Okay. Michelle, why don't you go first?
Gosh, well, it's kind of a loaded question, really, when I think of all kinds of different scenarios. I guess currently I have a seller who initially agreed, we all agreed on the listing price, and then another property came on that figuratively compared to theirs that was way high. And, we struggled with I struggled with getting them to finally agree to what I felt was best. So I guess we could run through those scripts again.
All right, let me echo that back to you. Did you have the place listed, or you just were verbally talking about what the target price should be?
We had the agreement, and normally in the agreement, I will oftentimes put the price that we've discussed and then put TBD, because with this market being so fast, if you have a listing agreement 30 days out, that price isn't going to be the same necessarily.
100%.
Yeah, so I don't like to stick to that. I like to tell them that we're going to really decide within 24 to 48 hours of it coming on the market what we're going to do, so that we can be competitive with what's out there.
Of course.
And another house came on the market
24 to 48 minutes before we go.
For real.
And set the price.
And I mean, now I'm calling around, to the agents. This was a historic house up in Commerce, so that was easy to do, to call around kind of to the agents that work those listings more than I do, and just say, hey, I have this house coming on the market. This is what we're thinking. What do you think? And it's not that I really want to know what they think. It's that I want them to say, oh, well, I have a house coming on the market around the corner from that, and we're going to be listed at X. That's really what I'm trying to do when I make those calls. And so we were going to go at 550, which I thought was a stretch. And then a house came on the market for 700. And so then they were like, oh, we want to start higher. We want to start at 575. So anyway, I went through everything, but I was not able to convince them or get them to see that 550 was a stretch.
I mean, you could call the 750 person and say, hey, can you help me understand where's the evidence that this place should be 750? So 700. So okay.
Yeah, so, I did. So I did everything. I called the agent. And again, you call with kind of the premise of, talk to me about your listing. How's it going?
Right.
Oh, well, these sellers are not motivated to have money out the butt. They're, they even had an appraisal done and it did not appraise for over 600, but they wanted to come in at 700, and they have time to wait. And I'm going to sit on this listing for 800 days. And, I got in the full
all gamut. That information is critical. Right.
Yeah.
One idea that I want to make sure that everyone is fully understands is and Michelle did a great job of this, which is we want them to choose us based on our activities and our plan to help them be successful. We do not want them to choose us because we gave them a good price. Okay.
Right.
So if you try to do what Michelle's doing, or is alluding to doing, which I think is the right thing, which is, let's decide that we want to be a partnership. Then we'll both monitor the market for new changes that happen, new listings, things that go under contract, while you get your carpet done, your paint done, or your landscaping done, whatever. And then we'll regroup again and we'll finalize the price. But Michelle, you're my person.
Yeah.
That I think is the perfect strategy. Where you get into trouble is they call you up and they say, hey, what's your number? I'm interviewing 6 different people and I want 6 different numbers. And then
Right.
you give them the number, right? The number that makes sense to you, yet it's lower than somebody else's number. And the other person is what's doing what they call buying the listing, right?
Yeah.
They'll say whatever price they want, just because they think that's what it's going to take to get the listing, and they'll deal with, getting them down on price later, right? So
Yeah.
it's important to go in with the mentality that Michelle's going in with. I think you did a great job there in terms of gathering the information for your
Yeah.
seller. In a situation like that, you could consider getting an appraisal. But at the end of the
Yeah.
day, here's an important concept, guys. You can't underprice a home.
Right.
Okay?
Yep.
If that home, if you want to go in at 550 and they're undeniably it should be 575, you'll get multiple offers. And the person who's willing to give you the highest terms, the best terms, that's what it's worth, right?
Yeah.
So if you get 560, if you get 565, if you get 580, that's what somebody in the public's willing to pay for it. But if you start
Right.
at 580, you might not
Yeah.
catch that person.
Why are people so afraid to believe that? They're so afraid that somehow they've sent the message that they're willing to take 550. They don't have, no matter how many times you show them or tell them, they just cannot grasp their head around somebody wanting to pay more than the asking price.
I think that's a
And
big part of it.
that's kind of where we were was, well, if, because I'm saying it's a marketing tool, price is a marketing tool. People are going to have expectations at that price. We're going to disappoint them when they walk in and the price doesn't match what they're used to. You're saying all the
Okay,
things,
so
and
we're
yet,
starting to get into some language that it's probably a little not advisable, right? We don't
Yeah.
necessarily want to say we're going to disappoint them because your house is down here, right? There's
Right.
more delicate ways of saying that. Like, hey, if your home is listed for 550, then it's going to be on a bunch of lists that are, let's say 300 to 550. Your home is going to
Yeah.
look the biggest, the most updated, the most new, etc. Okay. If you're on the list of 575, you're on the list of 500 to a million, and your home is going to be the smallest and the oldest and the least updated.
Yeah.
So it's not it's an objective comment rather than introducing some subjectivity to it. What were you going to add, Pam?
I was just saying that, yeah, I think a lot of people are having a difficulty understting that people are willing to pay over market.
Over
Because
list price.
over
List price.
yes, over list price. I'm sorry. Yes, you're right. And it's just because, we've seen in the past in areas like California or, Las Vegas or whatever, where they had done that. But this is the first time I've seen it in Atlanta.
Yeah.
Right. Well, here's an understanding that I want you guys to kind of internalize a little bit. Just the fact that there's a transaction in the first place indicates that there's a difference of opinion of value, right? We've talked a little bit about this before. If I wanted to sell a guitar to you and I looked it up online and it says this model guitar should sell for 500 bucks. If I'm going to sell it for 500 bucks to Michelle, she'd rather have the guitar than the money. So the guitar is actually worth more than $500 to her. The guitar is actually worth less than $500 to me because I'd rather have the money than the guitar. Does that make sense? So just the fact that there's an exchange indicates that people will value different things differently. So that's an important concept to kind of have in the back of your mind when it comes to pricing. Ultimately, you got to be careful. It's not paying above value, it's paying above list price. And the list price is just as likely to be incorrect as it is to be correct, right? So the list price was created by the seller and their agent, who may or may not have been intelligent when they were doing that, right? So our job is to prove what we think an appropriate value is. And then based on your level of motivation to secure this home, you have to determine, are you willing to go above that just so you win, right? And there are certain situations where you may be willing to push, and there's other situations where you're not. So let me share with you how I've been able to help successfully other buyers and sellers win in this type of environment. Would you like me to share those things with you? Then they think they're like in some exclusive club where if they don't sit down with you or they don't hear what you got to say, they could miss out, right?
Oh, you said something great there. That's what I didn't do that I could have done was the story. Let me share something with you. Do I have permission to tell you a story?
Right.
And then
that's
go
a great idea,
through.
but I have a small concern about that. Do you mind if I share it with you?
Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
And tell the story right from the heart. I mean, because obviously here I can tell them 3 different stories of listing a home and it's sold within days for 15K over, or and bad examples of historic homes that I've listed too high that sat on the market and are still on the market. I'm gone and they're still on the market with other agents. And so I think I could have done a better job of that. I think a lot's lost in text and email, and we're kind of, especially now with COVID having hit, we've gotten reliant upon not doing as many things face to face as we used to.
Okay, I love that you went in that direction. Anytime you are sensing that, and most of the time you should be sensing this, that there is a good likelihood that somebody is misunderstanding something, get on the telephone right now. Okay, here's a line that they say in bold a lot. So I'm going to read a phrase, I'm going to read a sentence to you guys, and I'm going to emphasize different words in the sentence, and you're going to understand how tricky this can be. Okay, the phrase is, I didn't say Bob took that. Okay. All right, listen to all the different ways that that could mean. I didn't say Bob took that. 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 Or I didn't say Bob took that. Do you see what I just did?
Yes.
Have you ever heard that, Michelle?
I haven't.
So what was that? 6 different ways that that could mean. So if I say, I didn't say Bob took that in an email or in a text, who the hell knows what they're going to think?
Right.
Right. So it's critical that that's how we have to understand our wording. Okay. And as a matter of fact, if you've taken bold, you've probably heard this statistic. It's roughly, let me see if I can find it really fast. It's about, I want to say it's like 38% of your communication is the
nonverbal.
or I'm sorry, it's 55% of your communication is body language. So I can't see you, but I might not even know what the body language is, right? And that's why sometimes you'll see, even if I'm on Zoom and I say something like I'll sometimes go like this, right? And what I do to help you, right, because it causes me to emphasize certain words and slow down a tiny bit, right? So 55% is in body language, okay? 38% is in tonality. How quickly you speak, how slowly you speak, how loudly you speak, how softly you speak, right? Are you speaking with upswings? I didn't say Bob took that. What do you say? Well, if it wasn't Bob, who was it? Right? I didn't say Bob took that. Well, what else did he take? You see what I'm saying? If you create curiosity by going up when you say a word, and you create steadiness and firmness when you say, are you ready to sign the contract? Right? It sounds like we should meet. It's a bit of a downswing, right? Well, should we meet? Well, I was thinking about it, but now that you say it like that, I think I'm going to change my mind. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that leaves 7%. That's what the words you use. So it's got very little to do with words. It's mostly the way that you're behaving when you're saying whatever you're trying to say. Remember, you cannot not communicate, right? So if somebody calls you and you're spending all day long to try to figure out when to call them back, you're communicating already. What you're communicating is they ain't at the top of the list. And they may react differently to that than you want them to or expect them to. That's why it's so critical to understand at the beginning how they want to be served, right? What is proper communication? If I have some negative information to share with you, how would you like me to share it? Right? Are there any mediums of communication that you prefer? Do you prefer text? Do you prefer telephone? I'll do whatever it takes to make you feel more comfortable. And just the sheer fact that I asked separates me from the other people that don't ask.
It's so true. Oh my gosh. This happened over the weekend, and my husband was even impressed because I was writing out the feedback from their agent caravan. And I was asking my husband, I said, does this wording sound right? And I was reading it to him. He goes, let me ask you a question. Why are you emailing them this instead of calling them? And I said, I actually already asked them, I have some feedback for you. Some of it's tough to hear. Would you like me to call you about it, or do you prefer an email? And they say, go ahead and put it in an email for now. And if we have questions, we'll call you. And you're right. So many agents don't ask. I ask it in my buyer and seller questionnaire. It's in the initial questionnaire that they have to send me. How would you like to receive tough news?
Exactly. Now, one interesting thing is, even if I was on the phone with them and they said, I've got some feedback for you, I say, great. Can you just put in an email? Because I'm just going to forward the email to the other party. Say, look, this is what they're going to say. I've been telling you about the cigarette smell for 2 months.
Yeah.
Right. Or, you know, the mural in the kids' room has got to go. The last 7 people that have been in the home. So right. So you're just sharing the news. Now, this kind of goes back to one of your other ideas a second ago, and we're going to get to you guys here in 1 second. Which is this idea of you've got to really understand the difference between subjective communication and objective communication, right? Subjective communication is we got an active listing on the market that's been on the market for a week and it's still not under contract, right? Now, the fact that we should be using that random price to dictate our price that's not strategic. But if we know that our home has been on the market for 2 weeks and we know the median home sells in 6 days, the market now is telling us we're wrong. Now we've put our belief out into the world and the world has reacted. Okay. There are now 8 billion people that walk the face of the earth that could buy this home right now, and not a single one of them has showed up. So it appears like the person who values this home the most is currently you.
And guess what? You get to keep it.
Yes. That's right. You're buying it every single day.
Yeah.
But you're telling me you don't want it. So we got to stop thinking about this as the home where I proposed to my wife, or the home that the first baby came home to, or any of that. This is just an asset that you don't want to own anymore. So we got to move you away from that mindset, right? You called me because you don't want to own this home anymore. So let's get to work, right? Now, when we go to buy, we can talk about all the fluffy stuff about, oh, will the babe, this is where the granddaughter will, do her homework or whatever. We can go in that direction later, but you don't want this place. So let's just talk about it black and white. Here's the data. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because they equate emotional stuff with more money.
Yeah.
Oh, well, this is the home that I brought my son home to, so it's probably worth more than that home.
Yeah.
Help me understand that. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Before we continue to go down that path, which I'm sure we could identify some more language patterns there, but Pam and Ryan, can you share with us a little bit about what you were hoping to learn today, or what you might be currently struggling with?
There's nothing like definitely specific, but something came up yesterday. I was on the bold, like the tech call.
Yep.
And then it also, because it also was in that the bold, like the listing video that we had to watch. That, I mean, those were really, some of those were long, but and maybe I could go back and find it again. But the part, I guess the person on this call said that and it's along the same vein, but they had lost a listing because they didn't give the highest price. Like another agent said they would price it higher, but this was after, like it was already done by then, like she'd already lost the listing. They'd already signed with someone else. So I guess it's more like, how do you broach that and talk about that in the right language during the listing to prevent that from happening? Like she didn't even get a chance to counter. Like if she said, I think, here's where we could price it around this range, like 500 to 550. And someone else said, well, I could do it for 700. Like she didn't even get the chance to combat. It's too late.
Okay. So let's talk about one thing you didn't talk about first, and then we'll get to what you just said. So
okay.
The first question is, the one thing we ought to know by that time is if they're interviewing other agents. Right? Because we've asked that question prior to going out to the home.
Right.
So if we know they're interviewing other agents, then we know that there may be some discussion of commission. There may be some discussion of differentiating marketing plans. There may be some discussion of brokerage. There may be some discussion of different prices, right? So now, if you know they're interviewing another agent, you should probably make sure you've got some fluency when it comes to those conversations. Now, one of which is what you just mentioned, which is pricing. So when you're looking at the data, you can say, now, I came as prepared as possible, and I wanted to share with you, in my opinion, the 5 homes on the market that you're probably most likely to be competing against, right? Here are the 5 homes that are most similar to yours that are currently under contract. These are the winners, okay? And here are the 5 homes that are most similar to yours, or 3 homes that have sold in the last 90 days. So this is a very objective view of the marketplace. Now, using this data, my goal is for the 2 of us to come up with a strategic price that's going to cause the most attention, most activity, so that we can get the best terms. Now, I know you're interviewing some other agents, and what I have found is that sometimes agents will come in here and tell you just about anything you want to hear so they can get your listing. I don't do that. Okay, I don't get paid from sticking a sign in the yard to list it. I get paid when I sell it, and you win when it's sold, right? So if you have other agents that come in here and they say, hey, all the data says 550, but I think I can get 600. I would investigate that a little bit. So now you've introduced something that they might experience later on, and you've caused them to doubt the validity of that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that's good. Okay.
So then they would come back and maybe say, hey, Ryan, this is Mr. and Mrs. Smith. You met with us 2 days ago in Woodstock, and we had this other agent came in, and would you believe they said it was worth 600 when all of the data that you showed us said it's worth 525. And the sale that they brought up was this one. Can you look into that for me? Right. And what they're basically saying is, you're my resource. They scared me a little bit, but they brought something to my attention that I want me and my resource to ponder. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So there's nothing wrong with sharing the fact that this is something that happens pretty regularly. Agents come in and they'll say whatever the hell they need to say to get the piece of business. So, if you feel like you're in that type of situation, let's talk about it. And then when somebody comes in and they say, well, I think we can get this, the first thing that seller says is, am I in that situation right now? Is this person lying to me? You follow what I'm saying?
Right. Okay.
Pam, what's on your mind today?
Mostly, I just always feel like I need, I'll say, less abrupt phrasing. So
I think you're in the wrong class. Sorry,
wrong class or wrong teacher. No, just kidding. No, so I just, I always feel like I need reinforcement for better ways to phrase things.
And do you feel like you're coming across too harsh, or do you feel like you're being too gentle, or where do you think the space is for improvement?
I think generally I can come across too harsh. But, you know, in some personalities, I may come across too gentle. I'm just trying to get more effective phrasing.
So most of the time when we speak to people, this is essentially how it happens. We state the facts, then we state our opinion of the facts, right? Here's a home that sold for 600. Here's one that sold for 625. Here's one that sold for 525. And that's why I think your home is worth 560. Right?
Yeah.
That's different than saying, here's a home that sold for 525. Here's one that sold for 575. Here's one that sold for 625. What are your thoughts? Right? I'm more than happy to share my thoughts, but I'm curious. Tell me what's on your mind. Right? And
Right.
more than likely, they'll come up with the same conclusions. But it sounds it's received much, much differently if they're the ones that come up with that idea rather than if you're the ones that come up with that idea. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So you might say, you know, what I learned from the other agent is that the person that has the most attractive offer right now has increased their earnest money to this amount and has no due diligence period and is asking for no closing costs. Based on what I just shared and everything that we've talked about thus far, what do you think is the appropriate strategy moving forward to make certain that we win? Right? And when you go in that direction, they would say something to the effect of, I think we need to do this. And oftentimes, interestingly enough, it's more aggressive than what you would have said. Right? I remember Federo. You remember Federo, Pam?
Yes.
When he was selling his house, the younger brother, when he was selling his house, I sent him all the data, and we had talked about a range of like 175 to 200 or so when he sold it. It's a long time ago. And that was kind of our range as he was, you know, finishing up, getting everything pretty. Then I sent him all the data, and just like Michelle and I were talking about earlier, we waited till the very last second to price the home because he liked me and he trusted my opinion, right? Because he knew it was rooted in facts, right? It just wasn't my, I think it's 185 today, right? And I said, what do you think? He said, I think our number's 200. He said, what do you think? I said, honestly, I think we could probably get 215. He said, do you think? I said, yeah, let me have a chance. Can we try it? Put it in market 215, under contract immediately. You see what I'm saying? So like sometimes they will undershoot it and you can be the one to push for something higher. And sometimes they will say, you know, hey, I was thinking 215. I say, I was thinking more like 200. Show which houses caused you to believe 215 was the right number. And let me share with you which houses caused me to think 200 was the right number. And it's as if we're having a conversation as a buyer and a buyer's agent, because this is ultimately the conversation that's going to happen. So let's talk about that right now, because we're a team. Because the second that you're expected to respond, immediately there's going to be a judgment on, is this person combative, like not on my team, if you will, or are they on a team with me, right? So when we were trying to decide whether we price it at 200 versus 215, it wasn't me over here and them over here and we're fighting. We're on the same side of the page trying to decide how to maximize our bottom line. Or quite frankly, it's not even necessarily about that. It's maximize the experience that they have based on what they're primarily concerned about, right? It may be money, it may be timing, it may be something different, right? So right before you are about to voice your opinion, what if instead you said, tell me what you're thinking?
Yeah, and I do use that a lot. You know, what are your thoughts?
I always like the phrase, I'm curious.
Yes.
What are you thinking? I'm curious is like this weird phrase that doesn't quite ask them to defend themselves, but they feel pressured to anyway. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Michelle, you looks like your brain is working overtime right this second. You're on mute.
Yeah, I'm just rolling in my mind my own scenario of what took place with that client. That's all. It's
Okay.
has a lot of similarities.
Okay, good. So let's talk a little bit about some kind of like conceptual language stuff real fast, okay? So remember that generally people are going to move in one mode or the other. They're either going towards pleasure or they're going away from pain, okay? So let me give you an example. Or let me say a sentence and you tell me, does this sound more like the person's going away from pain or moving towards pleasure? I need to lead generate.
Away from pain.
With pain.
Good, good.
Oh, away from pain. Okay.
Yep, I must take care of it today.
That one's different. Huh.
It could go either way.
Yeah.
I agree, but the answer they gave when I took this class was away from pain. Because it's like a need. It's like when you say you need to do something, when you use that word, it's oftentimes like it's something you're trying to get rid of or you're trying to move aside or something. Okay. I am capable of handling that task.
I think that's another away from pain.
I think that's towards pleasure.
Okay.
Because you're going to attack it. You're like, hey, I can do this. I'm okay. Let's try another one. I had better take that project over. I think once you take the project over, you're going to experience pleasure. Because if I don't take the project over, then the pain's not going to stop. So I'd say that's towards pleasure as well. Okay. So let's say here's a concept called recovery questions. Okay. The client says, I can't write the offer. I can't write the offer. How would you respond to that?
Why not?
I'm curious. Why do you feel you can't write the offer?
Okay. If I had to choose between the two, I would say Pam wins on that one.
I'm sure. Why not? That's what I'm thinking. But
right. So
sure,
a
good
response would be, tell me a little bit more about that. Or I'm curious, can you help me understand is there something specific that's preventing you from writing the offer? Another way to answer that question could be something, this is a little harsher, but it says, is it that you can't or that you won't? Right? So it's just a different way of asking for clarity. Or you could say something like, well, what would happen if you did write the offer? Right? You got to get them moving towards possibility. So, well, what would happen if you did write the offer? Right? What's the worst thing that could happen if we wrote the offer and we found out quickly under what terms the seller might be willing to sell this home? Well, what if I win? Then you'll have an opportunity to decide if you want to move forward, or you'll have an opportunity, because I'm protecting you with the paperwork, to leave the contract without penalty. Should we get started? Right? Here's some recovery questions, some sample recovery questions. What would happen if you did? What would happen if you didn't? Right? What's the worst thing that can happen? What would the consequences be? Right? What is stopping you? What would happen if you could? Well, I can't lead generate today. Well, what would happen if you could? Well, I can't. Well, what would happen if you could? Right? You're just pushing a little bit to try to understand why they're thinking the way they're thinking. And sometimes you have to shift their thinking a tiny bit to get them to move forward. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about another concept or two, which is everything that language skills revolve around is about rapport building. Okay, if you're in rapport, you can say just about anything. If you're out of rapport, there's basically nothing that's safe. Okay, would you agree with that?
Yeah.
So how do you get into rapport? You're going to get into rapport by doing a couple of things: matching by using words, and matching by using words or voice characteristics back, mirroring posture, gestures, and rate of speech or rate of breathing. So somebody answers the phone, they're like, hello. And you're like, hey, this is Michelle Slater with Keller Williams, and I noticed your home came off the market, and I wanted to know when you're planning on hiring a great agent like me to sell that home, right? That's not going anywhere. Hey, this is Michelle Slater over in Roswell with Keller Williams, right? If they're talking slow, you talk slow. If they're talking fast, you talk fast. Make sense? Generally,
yes, it does.
You want to kind of, a lot of times our intro should match their intro. So if they're like, hey there, if that's their way of picking up the phone, you say, hey there, this is Bill Linkwald. If they say, right, good morning, you say, hey, good morning, right? Echo it right back to them. Have you ever done that, Ryan?
Yeah, I think that that does, and actually, I even I have my hairdresser. She said that she actually, I don't know if it's a book or what, but she actually read that if you dress like your clients that are coming in, they will like you more. And she thought it was ridiculous, but she tried it, and you know, she because she has some tattoos and she sometimes colors her hair and does some things, but she said I dressed like, you know, in my nice khaki pants and some other shirt when she came in, and all of a sudden she loved me.
It's very true. People like, they're looking for similarities, right? So does this person speak with an accent? Does this person, you know, cuss a lot or not cuss a lot? Like, does this person color their hair or not color their hair? It could be any little things. Like, I walk in with a Auburn shirt on and the other person has an Auburn shirt. We immediately have a bond, right? People like people who sound like them, right? That's their model of the world, and this is your model of the world, and they're similar, so we know we got some rapport going on, okay? Subtly imitating the physical characteristics of the person that you're with, right? I know this sounds nuts, but let's say the person you're with is always kind of playing with their head and moving their hair back or something like that, right? Just throw it in there, right? If they cross their leg, a couple seconds later, maybe you cross yours. If they're leaning in like this, if you sit back like this, you're out of rapport. You don't have to like lean in and bump heads with them, but you might want to, you know, kind of lean forward a tiny bit, right? If they grab a sip of water, a minute or so later, you can grab a sip of water, right? Particularly if they say words that are like slightly unusual, right? Like for example, let me think of a good example of this. It's like if they were to say, you know, I want to be in a school district with phenomenal schools. You could use that. You should use that exact wording, right? So my job is to help you find a phenomenal school district. Not a great school district, not an amazing school district, but a phenomenal school district. Does that make sense? So you're kind of looking for phrases which are maybe slightly unusual to echo those words back to them. Y'all hear that?
Yeah, I was going to say that at first, when you hear these techniques and you start to do them, they kind of feel ridiculous because you think like, oh my gosh, how silly am I? I just repeated the exact same word that they repeated, but they really don't. It really does work. Like they feel heard, and that's where that rapport is so important, right? Because they feel heard, understood, aligned with you. I mean, that's not to go off too much of a tangent. That's why I say I specialize in historic properties, is because they just feel heard by somebody who gets it. It's not that I do anything different really than what another realtor would do.
Well, it's that you've identified what is pressing to them and you've let them know that you tend to that, right? So even if somebody were to come, if I was, let's say Ryan was my seller and I was the agent interviewing for the role, and I said, you know, what's the most important thing that you're expecting of your agent? and she says, well, I want an agent who has a great social media presence. I lock that away into my brain. And then later on in the presentation, I say, let me explain my social media presence to you. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I don't say, let me share what I do on social media. I say, let me explain my social media presence to you or with
Good.
you.
I gotta
Right.
remember this one. Yeah.
So you're looking for phrases that they say, like if I'm interviewing somebody that wants to, is learning more about PC or something, say, hey, tell me what's the biggest goal that you have for this year? And they say, I want financial freedom. Okay. So I want to know what financial freedom means to them. So just out of curiosity, can you help me better understand what financial freedom means to you? Right? Not why is financial freedom so important to you? Because if you ask a question that starts with why, they immediately say, none of your business. Why do I have to defend myself? Right? Wow, financial freedom, that sounds exciting. Can you share a little bit more about what that means, please? Right? Financial freedom means you make a certain amount of money passively each month. Does it mean that you hire an assistant? Does it what does that actually mean? And then later on, when I'm explaining the tools that we use to help our agents take their business to the next level, I might use that exact phrase, right? We've got several agents that that said financial freedom was important to them. And we've spent a little bit of time exploring the profit sharing opportunity. Part of our business goals together is to have a couple extra sales so that they can, have a down payment for an investment property so them and their family can have, financial freedom. You see what I'm saying? Now, hopefully this goes without saying, but you're not going to be a good enough listener and you're not going to be able to pick this little nuancy language up if you're busy thinking about what you're going to say. Right? So you got to already have that internalized. You see what I'm saying? So I can't really listen closely unless I'm not even concerned about what's going to come out of my mouth because I've said it 3 trillion times. Any questions on any of those ideas?
No, I mean, how do you get newer agents there, and how even like ourselves, like I feel like I have a lot of this down, but I need to hear it, internalize it, and practice it because I can veer off. What's the best?
I know this
mean,
sounds
should we-
nuts, but it's
Yeah.
printing a list of the phrases you want to get better at saying and
Yeah.
saying them over and over and over and over again. Like I literally, you guys know Tim Hardiman. He was a top agent in our office not too long ago. When I was team leader, I was often one of the first people to come into the office. And we lost Michelle. And I'd be there at 7:30 or something, and Tim would be in the back room, the big room, with the lights off, walking around in circles, saying his presentation over and over and over again. And he had all these routines about how he'd do it. He'd say it one day, he'd say it really fast as I can. I'm gonna. One day he'd say it really slowly. One day he'd scream it out loud. Like I saw him one day outside just screaming it out loud. Right? Because he was committed to learning it verbatim. Right? And as you would expect, he had a significant amount of success. Right? Because he wasn't worried about, the commission objection. He wasn't worried about whether they're interviewing another agent. He wasn't worried about, I'm going to hire my sister. I'm just curious. So what I'm hearing you say is that you're going to choose your agent based on the fact that she's your sister, or are you going to be choosing your agent based on sales results? So what that tells me is even that insinuates that his sister doesn't have good sales results. May or may not be true, doesn't make a difference. That's the insinuation. Y'all follow that? So did you review your sister's sales stats and then sales stats of her biggest competition and elect to hire her because of her sales activity or because the fact that she was your sister? I'm just curious. And they say, well, damn, I just hired her because it's my sister. Right. Now, I'll be honest, I never pushed too hard on that particular objection. I did put a little bit of doubt in their mind, but I didn't push that hard. Say, gosh, it can be a pretty complex situation, transaction. Do you have any concerns about working with your sister? It's like, oh, well, she's just getting started and I want to, help her out. Oh, wow. So she's just getting started, huh? Do you have any concerns about that? Right? Oftentimes silence is a good script. I think the home should sell for 300. And you just let it sink in. And sometimes if they don't respond, you're like, well, we could start at 310 and then go down to 300 if we need to, blah, 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 blah. You lost. Or you say, I think we should list for 300. In my professional opinion, we should list for 300. In order to maximize your profit, I believe we should list for 300. And then you stop talking and you wait it out if need be. And they say, okay, let's do it. You see what I'm saying? I don't think you guys heard this morning. Pam, I got door knocked for the first time in my entire life yesterday. Never been door knocked before. Okay. And this guy was selling pest control services and termite services, which I happen to need. And I just was really impressed with his process. And so he started quoting me stuff. Right. I said, I got to go check with my wife. Right. She handles all that. So I come back out and he's trying to give me a group deal if I'm doing the termite work, but he wants me to get the mosquito treatment as well. But we already do mosquito treatment with somebody else. So I said, well, what's your package? Right. And he starts naming it off. I said, I gotta call the other company and just check in with them about what chemicals they use or how often they come or something like. He's like, what if I give you a better deal? So, I don't know, what's your better deal? How about $50 a month? I gotta probably just check with my wife and see. How about $45 a month? You see what I'm saying? The guy lost hundreds of dollars because I just wasn't prepared to give an answer, right? And he'd be available tomorrow, so that it wasn't like I wasn't gonna lose out on anything. He was the one that was gonna lose out. Potentially, right? So you have to understand as a negotiator, who's got the power here, right? He's standing in front of me in my house. Tomorrow, he won't be there. I could call him anytime I want. If he's willing to give me the deal today, he's willing to give me the deal tomorrow. I promise you. You see what I'm saying? So I had the upper hand and I behaved accordingly, right? What do you guys hear from that?
Well, I think for one thing, you have to know when you're in a position of strength or not. There's times when you know the person probably wants to work with you, and other times when you know that you're the long shot, and I think a part of that is how you can handle the situation too. That if you've begged to just hear me out for this, then that's different than someone coming to you and saying, can you help me sell my home?
Yeah, in a weird kind of way, what you're saying is, Ryan, can you just tell me exactly how you want to be served? And then you say it, and then I confirm that I'm willing to do that, which most of the time you should be. And you say, okay, that's how I service people. Right? Right? So you want me to email you instead of text? Cool, I can do that. Right? You want to be called on Monday instead of Thursday? I can do that too. Right? You're just simply trying to figure out how they're going to make their decision and then put yourself right in the path of business. Right? That's what my team does. Let me end with a couple of a concept called presuppositions. Okay, presuppositions. There's something called an awareness presupposition. Okay, and here are some examples of an awareness presupposition. Begin, beginning, notice, noticing, starting, assuming, feeling, becoming, discovering, sensing, experiencing, achieving, fulfilling, considering, knowing, assuming, okay? And it goes on and on. So here are the rules. We need to decide what action or belief you want to induce on someone, then introduce the idea with a presupposition, and then must be about creating a win-win situation. So here's an example. As we get closer to the next home, you'll start to realize what a great neighborhood it's in. And with all the amenities in the area, it will feel just like home. So that would be a good phrase if like they said, I'm just looking for a home that feels like home. So maybe the question you ask them when they're inside is, does this home feel like home to you? Right? You're echoing back their wording. Okay. As we get closer to the next home, you'll start to realize what a great neighborhood it's in. So now they're going to be looking for the neighborhood, particularly if they told you that's important. Okay. Here's another one. Once you begin to notice the increasing number of homes coming onto the market every day, you'll decide it's time to sell now. Right? So you're not saying there's a lot of homes coming on the market, you need to sell now. You're saying once you begin to notice it, right, you'll realize that it's time to sell now. So you're connecting what the message you want them to understand while not having to point blank say it, right? Naturally, you're paying attention to the urgency to sell your home now as the market is dropping, so it makes sense to list it now. Maybe they were or were not paying attention to the urgency at all, but you've just now introduced it. Now they are. Okay, here's another type of presupposition called an automatic presupposition. After we get done discussing the market, most people instinctively list at my strategic price. So it just logically sells and they net the most money. Logically, when we're done, you'll just sign the contract knowing that the sooner we start, the faster the home will sell. Right? You'll effortlessly get more excited about working with me to sell your home as we go through the action plan I've designed specifically for you. Oh, we're just gonna have so much fun together. Don't you want to have fun with me? Those last two are ones I just was blurting out, but you see what I'm saying? So you connect the feeling that you want them to experience with your plan in the first place. What thoughts do you have on that?
I mean, I like that, but I think you need to, some of that you'll have to practice some to.
All of that you're gonna have to practice. There's no doubt.
To feel like it's normal and not like, oh, wait, hold on, let me pull out my list of presuppositions.
Right. Exactly. It's everything you got to practice, right? It's like, but you know how sometimes they like you practice a certain spot, you practice like, let's say a 3-pointer from a certain angle on the floor, because if we run this play, you'll find yourself open at that moment. And so we don't like practice it like here and shoot the shot. We practice it like catching the ball here because we came from another spot to shoot it. So we want to practice just like we're going to experience it. That's the important part of like role play, for example, right? Or practicing the script. So we really understand, we can really internalize how we're going to feel at that moment. So if you might feel like a little burn when somebody says, I don't want to pay you 3%. You should have somebody say, I don't want to pay you 3%. And then you say what you want to say, rather than you just say what you want to say. Because if you're experiencing, if you don't like internalize how that feels, then it's not going to be authentic. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we could go on forever. The point of today is really, I would just want you to constantly understand how much there is to learn. Simply how great you can be simply by working daily, intentionally on exactly how to be a better agent, right? What do I need to learn to be more competent today? Can I pick up one new language pattern today, right? See, I say right a lot. You guys have probably noticed that, right? Right, I'm just looking for, I even said it again. I'm looking for buy-in, right? I want to make sure you've heard me. I want to make sure it's okay to move on. Okay, I hope this was helpful, guys. I appreciate you being here.
It was helpful. Thank you.
All right, have a great day.